back to all of the player feedback you mentioned, you probably came into the middle of a whole bunch of classic D&D arguments, like the alignment system, wizard superiority, the importance of splitting the party, etc. As a gamer and a GM, what's your favorite of the classic gamer arguments, and how does the new edition speak to this?
Interesting. I wouldn't say I have a favorite, partly because I'm always a little mystified by the acrimony that sometimes arises, because for me, ultimately, I've been playing D&D since first edition. I started playing it in elementary school, and for me, D&D has always been a source of camaraderie with the people I play it with, a chance to tell amazing stories, so it always kind of bums me out when people start actually fighting about something that really is supposed to be a source of happiness for us. Now, that said, I am always fascinated by what is usually referred to as the quadratic wizard versus linear fighter problem, because the analysis of it is of the issue in various editions is often spot on. Sometimes it's wildly off target, and I find both things fascinating. Partly because it's a window for me into how certain really dedicated fans view the game, how they analyze the game. It's often a chance for me to adjust how I'm analyzing something, because sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes the playtesters and also people writing on forums who are most off target with their mathematical analysis, with their logical analysis, sometimes they'll provide the best feedback because they're often providing such a different way of viewing something that even if they're basically crying fire and saying this part of the game is on fire, and we analyze everything, we're like, no, it's actually fine. They're often fantastic, though, at helping us see that the thing right next to that thing is actually on fire and no one is noticing. And so we often find feedback that might seem really off base actually very helpful, because often those people are sort of like canaries in a mine, and we're like, they think this is the thing that's wrong. It's okay, but oh my gosh, there's this gigantic issue that they're right next to, and thank goodness they brought their concern up, because it's helping us address this other issue.
Yeah, there is definitely a potential for 4th edition feel to the fighter. He gets more options, especially with the Battlemaster option. Was that done on purpose? I mean, did you guys look at that and say, how can we take all of the options the fighter have and keep him from being just a linear class and make him a little more robust like the wizard was? Was that definitely the thought process?
Well, our goal wasn't so much how can we make the fighter feel comparable to the wizard. Our goal was how can we make the best array of fighter options that speak to what makes the fighter awesome. Because we're not designing a PvP game.
Right.
It's a cooperative game. And so as much as some fans would like us to have, all the classes sort of pitted against each other, or want to see them all be able to sort of win in a one-on-one fight, the classes are designed to slot together as a team. And what's important for us is not that they're all equal in a head-to-head fight. Our goal is that in a team, they can all contribute meaningfully throughout a campaign. Now, that means contributing meaningfully in different settings. A bard, for instance, is rarely going to be as effective of a frontline fighter as a fighter. But a bard is going to shine in social interaction, in beguiling foes, and having a lot of fun tricks to use at different times. And we do that because each class really appeals to a different type of player. Or they might all appeal to the same player, but when that player is in a different mood.
Sure.
And so the last thing we want to do is make all of the classes feel the same, or be able to do exactly the same thing. But going back to speak directly to your question, when we were working on the Battlemaster, we certainly did look at the work that we did on the 4th edition fighter, and we were inspired by it, and looked at what were the most fun things that fighter could do, and we also looked at the Warlord in 4th edition, and took elements of both the Warlord and the fighter and incorporated them into the Battlemaster. There's also a bit of the 4th edition Warlord in the College of War option in the Bard.
Okay, yeah.
So then I guess the sense I'm getting here is that the whole mechanic of classes, as opposed to, like, I guess previous editions, would be the sum really is greater than its parts. So how did you come up with, I guess, the math, I guess in air quotes, the math of figuring out how to make each part equal a better sum, when I guess the gamer culture has been inundated with, I guess, the concept of PvP.
Right.
Because really, I mean, the term PvP wasn't really a thing 40 years ago when it was first created. Right. So how did you balance out the idea of PvP or team?
Right. Although it's funny, even before we had the term PvP from video games, there's always been a little bit of this in D&D, because I remember even as a kid, my friends and I we'd always want to, make claims about which of our characters was the most powerful. Just like the arguments that people have of, in a straight up fight, who would win, the Hulk or Superman, that
Sure.
kind of thing. It's just a fun mental exercise that we make as gamers, or comic book nerds, whatever our fandom is. As going to the question of math, the math is definitely an important factor when we're figuring out what we call output in a class. And output refers not only to damage, but it also refers to healing in the case of a healer, because healing has a very interesting role, which I won't get into in detail here. It would get really boring in terms of overall output of a group. But basically, anything strictly mathematical like that, we do balance very carefully. Now, balance, though, does not mean everybody is equal.
Yeah.
Like the barbarian and the fighter simply deal more damage on average than a wizard would whacking somebody with his staff. That's intentional.
Yeah.
Partly because that's what the barbarian and fighter are supposed to be good at. We, in other areas of the game, definitely have to apply different sorts of analysis than purely mathematical analysis, because there are effects that scale perfectly, and so they require really much more sort of logic analysis and interaction analysis. There are certain charm effects, for instance, that have often appeared in spells, control effects like immobilizing a person, which in certain circumstances can amount to completely neutralizing a foe. So certain effects like that, we weren't going to take them away, because they're not only classic for some of our spellcasters, but really they are archetypal for these characters in fantasy fiction, in movies, etc. I mean, if we didn't have wizards or bards who could beguile people, there would be something wrong with our game.
Yeah.
So to control effects like those, we introduced other mechanics. This is why we have the concentration mechanic, for instance. You'll notice that many spells in the new edition require concentration. Now, this mechanic has existed in one form or another in most editions. Part of it is, when a spellcaster is concentrating on a spell that requires concentration, if they take damage, there's a chance that the spell is interrupted and is lost. That's not the key for us. The key in the new version of concentration is that a spellcaster can have only one of these spells going at a time. And you'll notice that most of our control spells, most of our buff spells, including even things like flying or turning yourself invisible or giving a person, the magic weapon spell, which gives +1 to their sword, all of those things require concentration. So an individual spellcaster has to make choices. It's no longer possible for one spellcaster to have 3 areas of effect going at the same time, with 5 buffs on him or herself, with additional buffs on their objects, and conjured creatures all going at the same time. That spellcaster is going to have to pick one of those things. Now, there are certain spells that we've made sure can also be used in tandem with a concentration spell. But to have multiple effects like this going at once, it's going to require teamwork. It's going to require multiple spellcasters having different concentration spells going at once.
Talk a little bit about the whole Tyranny of Dragons event, and how and why players can get involved.
The main way that people can get involved right now is to play through the Horde of the Dragon Queen, which is the first of the 2 Tyranny of Dragons adventures. They can do that in home play, but they can also do it in store play. Our Encounters program will actually include parts of that massive adventure. And there's adventure content here at Gen Con also related to Tyranny of Dragons. The other way, again, that people can get involved is through the Neverwinter MMO and the Tyranny of Dragons content there.
So to go even further beyond, I guess, beyond the gaming table, one aspect of the role-playing game experience that has always been compelling is how you can apply that, or how people have found ways to apply it to the classroom. A lot of schools adopt, gaming groups as part of extracurricular activities, after-school programs. Is there any plans for Dungeons and Dragons to maybe create a sponsored event similar to Encounters for classrooms to aid in education?
It's not something we have planned now, but I mean it's a great idea. We are delighted by the number of libraries and schools that do use D&D, and we're hoping they'll continue to do so. I'm hoping that the new edition makes their work even easier.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so. I'm good too.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. This has been a good time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.